I never thought a trust exercise in a corporate training seminar would end up being one of the most intense moments of my life. Seriously, it sounds ridiculous. Me, a 28-year-old IT analyst, standing in a bland conference room with a bunch of strangers, trying not to fall flat on my face. But that's exactly how it started. So picture this. The HR guy, this overly enthusiastic dude with a clipboard, announces we're going to do a trust fall exercise. You know the one. One person falls backward, eyes closed, and the other catches them. Classic team building 101. Everyone's a little tense. Some people are joking to break the ice. Others just look awkward and uncomfortable. Now, here's the thing. I'm not exactly Mr. Trust Falls. I'm more of a keep your feet on the ground kind of guy. I don't trust easily, especially not in a room full of coworkers I barely know. But when the HR guy says pair up, I look around and before I can even think, this guy next to me, tall, with these messy dark curls that look like they've been tousled by the wind, and this easy smile, he just meets my eyes and nods. No hesitation. "I'm Jamie," he says, extending his hand. I shake it, and there's something about the way he doesn't sound like he's just going through the motions. Like he's genuinely here and actually kind of not awkward, which honestly is rare in these sessions. So we pair up, and the instructor reminds us, you have to trust your partner completely. When you fall, you have to let go. And when you catch, you have to hold on. Simple, right? Except when it's you standing there, heart pounding, and Jamie's eyes locked on yours, steady and calm. It feels like there's more riding on this than just a stupid exercise. He goes first. He closes his eyes, leans back slowly, and I catch him without thinking. He's heavier than he looks, and for a second I'm amazed I didn't drop him. Then it's my turn. I take a deep breath, and before I can talk myself out of it, I close my eyes and let myself fall backward. Except something weird happens. I expect to feel the solid catch, steady hands breaking my fall. But instead, I feel Jamie's grip, and then a pause, a hesitation. Instead of letting go or just holding me, he sort of tightens his grip. Not too tight, but enough that I don't fall, and yet also enough that I can feel the tension in his arms like he's just as scared as I am. I open my eyes and there he is, looking at me, and neither of us lets go. It's a stupid moment, really. One that could have just been forgotten in the next task. But there's this electricity hanging in the air between us that nobody else notices. And honestly, neither of us says a word for the longest time after that. What I didn't know then was that this awkward, almost embarrassing trust fall was the first time I'd ever really let someone in. And Jamie, well, he might have been the one who caught me for real. Not just in that room, but for everything that came after. We just stood there, locked eyes for a few beats that felt like an eternity in a room full of people, all of us pretending to pay attention to the next ridiculous team-building activity. Finally, Jamie gave the slightest shrug, like he was saying, well, that was weird, but okay, without actually saying it. I guess that means we both passed the trust test? He joked, voice low enough that only I could hear. I laughed, a little breathlessly, trying to shake off the sudden weirdness that had settled over me like a fog. Yeah, I guess so. You're a good catcher. He smiled, that easy smile again, and nodded toward the coffee station in the corner. Want to grab a drink? I'm betting this seminar has some decent caffeine at least. Normally, I would have found an excuse to duck out, maybe scroll through my phone or pretend to take a call. But there was something about him, about that brief moment where neither of us let go, that made me want to keep talking. So I said yes. We found a quiet corner away from the buzz of the other employees trying to network or avoid networking, and for the first time since the session started, I felt like I could breathe without forcing it. Jamie talked about silly stuff, the traffic he'd navigated this morning, the terrible coffee they usually serve at these things, how he'd transferred to this company from a smaller startup a few months ago. And then, just like that, he asked me what I did. I gave the usual spiel about IT support and database stuff, expecting the glazed-over eyes that usually come with any tech explanation. But Jamie actually listened, asking questions about what projects I was on, what my day-to-day looked like. It felt like he was interested, not in a fake, polite way, but genuinely curious. Somewhere in that conversation, I caught myself smiling more than I had in weeks. There was no pretending to be someone else, No pressure to be perfect. Just two guys talking. When the next activity was announced, I felt a pang of disappointment. I didn't want this to end. Guess we should head back, Jamie said, looking a bit reluctant. Yeah, I agreed, already dreading the idea of slipping back into the background. Back in the main room, things went faster. Names were forgotten, tasks blurred together, but every time I glanced at Jamie, he was there with this calm energy that reminded me of that moment when we didn't let go. After the seminar wrapped up, most people scattered, eager to get home or meet up with friends. But Jamie caught up with me near the exit. Hey, I was thinking, if you're not busy this evening, want to grab a bite? There's this taco place a few blocks from here that's surprisingly good. It felt impulsive to say yes, but honestly, I wanted to see where this was going, so I did. Walking down the city streets with Jamie felt easy, the kind of natural that you don't get with just anyone. We talked about favorite movies, terrible high school memories, and the kinds of music that made us feel something real. At some point, Jamie leaned into me, and I didn't pull away. After dinner, we ended up at this quiet little park nearby. The city noise faded into the background, replaced by the occasional laugh from a passing group of friends and the soft rustling of leaves. We sat on a bench, shoulders touching, and I realized I hadn't felt this connected to someone in a long time. Not just in a casual way, but like maybe this person could actually see me. Jamie turned toward me, eyes reflecting the streetlights, and said, "You ever think about how weird it is that we met over a trust fall? Like, I usually avoid those things." "Me too," I admitted. "I'm surprised I didn't bail." He laughed softly. "Glad you didn't." We stayed there for a while, talking about the stuff we didn't usually share. Our fears, the pressure to keep everything together, the loneliness that sometimes creeps in even when you're surrounded by people. At some point, Jamie reached out and took my hand. It was tentative at first, like testing the waters, but when I didn't pull away, he squeezed gently. That simple touch felt like an anchor. When we finally parted that night, I felt something shift inside me. Like the idea of trust wasn't just some forced exercise anymore. It was real, tangible, and it was happening between us. Driving home, I kept replaying the moment when I fell backward, and Jamie caught me. Not just physically, but maybe something more. I didn't know what this was yet, but I wanted to find out. The next day, I showed up at work still buzzing from the night before, but trying not to let it show. I mean, you don't exactly walk into the office the day after a first date and act like you're floating on air. Instead, I buried myself in emails and tried to focus on some bug fixes that had been giving me a headache all week. But then, out of nowhere, at around mid-morning, Jamie popped into my cubicle. He was holding 2 coffees, one with extra cream, my favorite, which he'd somehow remembered. "I figured you might need a refill," he said with that easy grin that was suddenly becoming my favorite thing to see. I accepted the coffee like it was a lifeline. "You're spoiling me already." He laughed, then leaned against the edge of my cubicle wall, glancing around like we were rebels breaking the rules just by having a casual conversation during work hours. "So, how's the world of IT treating you today?" he asked, genuinely interested. I shrugged, same old. But thanks for the coffee. And, well, for last night. It was fun. "I'm glad we didn't bail," Jamie said, eyes bright. We chatted for a few minutes, and just like that, the day felt a little lighter. I realized I was already looking forward to seeing him again. Not just because of the tacos or the walk in the park, but because Jamie somehow made me feel safe in a way I hadn't experienced before. Over the next week, we kept finding reasons to talk. Whether it was grabbing lunch, sharing dumb memes, or just catching each other's eyes across the office and exchanging a quick smile. It was subtle and low-key, but for me, it was everything. One Friday afternoon, Jamie invited me out after work to check out this new art exhibit downtown. I wasn't much of an art guy, but the idea of spending a few hours with him was enough to say yes immediately. The gallery was small and quiet, filled with these abstract paintings that I mostly didn't understand. But Jamie was animated, explaining what he liked about certain pieces, how colors and shapes could express feelings without words. I found myself looking at him more than the art, noticing the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things he cared about. The way his hand brushed against mine accidentally when he pointed at a painting, and I didn't pull away this time. Later, as we walked through a quiet side street toward a nearby cafe, Jamie stopped and looked at me with this nervous smile. "Can I be honest?" he asked. "Always," I replied, my heart picking up pace for reasons I didn't fully understand. I'm not great at all this dating stuff. Or, letting people in. "I've been burned before," he said softly. "But with you, it feels different. Like I want to try." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, me too." We stood there for a long moment, the city lights casting a warm glow around us. Then Jamie reached out and took my hand again, this time without hesitation. That simple touch said everything words couldn't. After that night, things moved fast in that quiet, steady way that felt natural. We started spending more time together outside of work, late-night phone calls, weekend hikes, cooking experiments that usually ended in laughter and a little bit of smoke. We shared stories about our families, our dreams, the awkward moments that made us who we are. One Sunday afternoon, we found ourselves back at that same park where we'd sat after our first date. The air was crisp, and the leaves were just starting to turn. Jamie pulled me close and said, "I don't think I've ever trusted anyone like this before. Not just with a trust fall, but with everything." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words. "Neither have I." He kissed me then, soft and tentative at first, like testing the waters, but quickly gaining confidence. It was like everything we'd been holding back was finally safe to let go. In that moment, I realized that trust wasn't just about not falling. It was about choosing to stay, to hold on, even when it was scary, and with Jamie, I wanted to hold on forever. The days that followed felt like some kind of slow-motion movie. Every moment with Jamie was a little more vivid, a little more real. We were still navigating that awkward in-between place where everything feels new but also inevitable. Like it was supposed to happen, just not on my carefully plotted schedule. One Thursday evening, Jamie invited me over to his apartment for dinner. I wasn't sure what to expect. He'd mentioned he liked cooking, but somehow always ended up ordering takeout. When I arrived, the place smelled like garlic and something spicy, which instantly made my stomach growl. His kitchen was a mess. Pots and pans everywhere, bits of chopped veggies scattered on the counter. Jamie was in the middle of turning what looked like a very ambitious stir-fry, swaying slightly to a playlist that was a mix of indie rock and some jazzy oldies. He glanced up when I stepped in and smiled that same smile that made me feel like I was exactly where I belonged. "Welcome to chaos," he said, waving a spatula like a conductor's baton. I laughed and dropped my bag by the door. "I'm impressed. This smells amazing," he shrugged, flipping something in the pan. "I promise it tastes better than it looks." We moved into the living room with plates and settled into his couch, which was covered in these ridiculously soft throws and pillows. We ate, talked about our week, swapped embarrassing stories from childhood, and somewhere between the second helping and a bad pun about carrots, I realized I was completely comfortable, like I could just be myself, and it was enough. After dinner, Jamie pulled out a worn-out board game from a shelf, grinning like a kid. Prepare to get crushed. I raised an eyebrow. "You're on." Turns out, he was way more competitive than he let on. We spent the next hour trash-talking and laughing until my sides hurt. The kind of laughter that feels like a release, like you're shedding some of the stress and awkwardness that's been building up. At one point, Jamie caught me staring at him mid-laugh, and his smile softened. "Hey," he said quietly, voice low, "you okay?" I nodded, but I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. "Yeah, just happy." "Me too," he said, leaning in just a little closer. The space between us shrunk until it disappeared, and our lips met in a kiss that was gentle but full of everything we'd been holding back. The trust, the fear, the hope. Later, as we lay tangled together on his couch, I felt a flutter of nerves. I wanted to say something important, but wasn't sure how. Jamie must have sensed it because he squeezed my hand and said, "You can tell me anything." I took a deep breath. I've never really let someone in like this before, not just physically, but emotionally. It scares me. He nodded, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. Same here, but maybe that's what makes it worth it. I smiled despite the lump in my throat. Yeah, maybe. Over the next few weeks, our connection deepened in all the little ways you don't always notice at first. The quick messages during the day, the way Jamie remembered my coffee order without asking, how I found myself rearranging my schedule just to spend a little more time with him. One night, after a late shift at work, Jamie was waiting for me outside the office building. He looked tired but happy, holding 2 cups of steaming tea. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing me one. We sat on the steps, the city lights flickering around us, and just talked. No pretenses, no distractions. At some point, Jamie got serious. "I know we're still figuring things out, but I want you to know I'm in this. All of it." I looked at him, heart pounding. Me too. The trust between us wasn't just about catching each other anymore. It was about choosing to stay, in the moments when it would have been easier to run. And with Jamie, I wanted to stay through everything. There was still so much unknown, insecurities, fears, the usual awkwardness of new relationships. But for the first time, I felt like I had someone who would catch me no matter what. And honestly, that was enough. A few weeks into things, I realized something that felt both obvious and terrifying. I was falling for Jamie, not just in the head over heels, butterflies in the stomach way that shows up in rom-coms, but this quiet, steady feeling that settled deep in my chest every time I thought about him or caught his gaze across the room. One evening, Jamie invited me over for dinner again. This time, his apartment was spotless, and there was a warm glow from candles scattered around the living room, the kind of setup that made it clear this was more than just a casual hangout. He greeted me at the door with a shy smile. I wanted tonight to feel special. I stepped inside, feeling a little overwhelmed by how much this mattered to both of us. It already does. We sat across from each other at his small dining table, sharing a meal that Jamie had cooked from scratch, something Italian, with homemade pasta and a sauce that was so good I was pretty sure he was lying when he said it was easy. As we ate, the conversation drifted toward the future, which was a little scary. Neither of us wanted to rush, but we both knew this felt different than anything we'd done before. So, Jamie said, breaking a piece of bread, "What do you want? Like, really want?" I looked down at my plate for a moment before meeting his eyes. "I want to keep doing this. Us. I don't know exactly where it's going, but I want to find out with you." He smiled, relief and something like hope flickering in his eyes. Me too. I've been scared to say it out loud, but yeah, I want that. Later, curled up on the couch with the movie neither of us was really watching, Jamie's hand found mine again. There was a new tenderness in his touch, like he was silently promising to be there through the messy parts, the uncertain parts. But as much as things felt right, old fears didn't just disappear overnight. One night I caught myself hesitating before answering his texts, second-guessing every small thing I said, worried about coming on too strong or being too vulnerable. Jamie noticed. He called me one evening when I didn't reply for a while, and his voice was gentle but serious. "Hey, what's going on? You've been quiet." I sighed, leaning back against the wall. "I don't know. Sometimes I get scared. Like, what if this doesn't work? What if I get hurt again?" There was a long pause on the other end before he answered. "I get that. I'm scared too. But maybe that's the point. Being scared means it matters, and we don't have to have it all figured out right now." That night was a turning point. I realized that trusting someone wasn't about never feeling afraid. It was about choosing to take the risk anyway. The next few months were a blur of moments, small and big, that knitted us closer together. We celebrated stupid victories, like finishing a tough project at work, and supported each other through bad days that had nothing to do with us but still felt heavy. One Saturday, Jamie took me hiking to this spot he said was his secret refuge. The trail was harder than I expected, but when we reached the summit, the city stretched out below us like a glittering sea. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing in the view and the quiet. Then Jamie turned to me, eyes soft and serious. "I'm glad I didn't let go that day during the trust exercise, because I think I caught more than just your fall." I squeezed his hand, feeling the same way. Me too. That night, as we lay together, the world outside felt a little less scary. Because we had each other. And sometimes, that's all the trust you really need. A few days after that hike, I found myself pacing my apartment, fingers nervously tapping against the edge of the couch. Jamie and I had been together for a few months now, and things were good, really good. But there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, something I wasn't sure how to say out loud, even to myself. I'd been thinking a lot about that trust fall we did at the seminar, how it all started with that one moment neither of us letting go. And suddenly, I realized I wanted more than just the easy parts of this relationship. I wanted to be all in, even if that meant risking everything. So that night, when Jamie knocked on my door, I was ready. I opened it, and he smiled. That familiar, warm smile that made my heart do this ridiculous thing where it skipped a beat. "Hey," he said, holding a bottle of wine. "Thought we could celebrate the weekend." I stepped aside and let him in. We settled on the couch, the wine glasses catching the dim light. We talked about the usual stuff: work, plans for the summer, our favorite guilty pleasure TV shows. But I could tell Jamie sensed there was something on my mind. Finally, I cleared my throat. "Jamie, can I be honest with you?" He leaned in, eyes curious but open. "Always." I took a deep breath. "I'm scared. Not about us. Well, maybe a little, but about what it means to really let someone in. I've been burned before, and sometimes I catch myself holding back." He reached out, took my hand, and squeezed it gently. "Me too, but you don't have to be scared with me. We can take it one step at a time." Something about his words settled the knot in my chest. I looked into his eyes and realized I didn't want to hold back anymore. "I want to trust you. Completely." Jamie's smile was slow and genuine. He leaned over and kissed me softly. "You already do." After that night, everything started to shift, just a little. We became more than just casual partners. We were a team, figuring out how to navigate the world together. One Sunday afternoon, Jamie invited me to meet his friends. I was nervous. Introducing someone new always was, but when I met them, they welcomed me with open arms. It felt like I was stepping into a world I didn't know I needed. Later that evening, Jamie and I sat on his balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights flicker below. "I'm glad you didn't let go," he said softly, echoing that first moment between us. "Me too," I replied, feeling like those words held everything we'd been through and everything still to come. We leaned into each other, the kind of comfortable silence that speaks volumes, and I knew that whatever happened next, this was where I was meant to be. A few weeks after that balcony night, life had this way of sneaking in, reminding me Jamie and I had settled into a rhythm that felt good, comforting even, but I was starting to notice the little cracks appearing beneath the surface, mostly in my own head. See, trusting someone isn't just about big gestures or romantic moments. Sometimes it's about the quiet stuff. The doubts that creep in when you're alone. The old fears that pop up uninvited when you least expect them. I caught myself worrying that maybe I was moving too fast or that Jamie would get tired of me, with all my insecurities and awkwardness. One rainy Thursday evening, I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through my phone but not really paying attention, when Jamie texted me, "Can we talk? Face to face?" My stomach flipped. I wasn't sure what to expect. When he showed up at my door 20 minutes later, drenched from the rain but smiling, I felt a wave of relief. He stepped inside, shook off his jacket, and sat down next to me. "I've been thinking," he started, looking serious but vulnerable, "that maybe we're both holding back more than we realize. I want to be honest with you, even when it's hard." I nodded, heart pounding. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "Scared that I'll mess this up or that I'm not enough. But I don't want those fears to keep me from being with you." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I feel the same." "I guess trusting someone means letting go of the parts that scare us the most." Jamie smiled, relief softening his features. "Exactly. That night, we talked for hours, peeling back layers, sharing things we hadn't dared to say before. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of silence, of awkward pauses, but it was real. And that made it all worth it." Afterward, we curled up together, and I realized something important. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the strongest kind of trust there is. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I looked over at Jamie, still asleep beside me, and felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude. For him. For us. In the weeks that followed, we kept building on that foundation. We celebrated small victories, like finally picking a movie without arguing, or supported each other through rough days when nothing seemed to go right. One Saturday, Jamie surprised me with tickets to a concert by a band I'd mentioned in passing months ago. We spent the night dancing and laughing, wrapped up in the music and each other. Afterward, as we walked home under a sky full of stars, Jamie slipped his hand into mine. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought a dumb trust fall would lead me to this." I laughed, squeezing his hand. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." He stopped walking and turned to me, eyes shining. "Me too. I don't want to let go this time." I smiled, feeling that same electricity from the very beginning, the moment when neither of us let go. "I won't," I promised. And with that, we kept moving forward together, one step at a time, learning that sometimes the best kind of trust is the kind that holds on, no matter what. Months passed, and with each one, Jamie and I grew more comfortable in the kind of relationship that felt less like a whirlwind and more like a steady heartbeat. We weren't perfect, far from it, but there was something grounding about knowing that, no matter what, we had each other's backs. One chilly Sunday afternoon, we found ourselves back at that park where it all began, the same bench where we'd shared shy smiles and stolen glances after our first date. The leaves were thick on the ground, crisp and golden, and the air had that unmistakable fall bite that makes you want to hold on to someone a little tighter. Jamie had this goofy grin on his face as he pulled something small from his jacket pocket. I recognized the shape instantly, a simple silver ring. "I've been thinking," he started, voice a little nervous but steady, "about trust. About how scary it can be to let someone in, but also how worth it is when you find the right person." I swallowed, heart hammering in my chest. "This isn't about rushing or grand gestures," he continued, "but about choosing to hold on every day. To the good, the bad, the in-between. I want to keep choosing you." He slid the ring onto my finger, small but meaningful. It wasn't a promise of forever written in stone, but a real, honest symbol of what we'd built, a trust that neither of us would let go. I looked up at him, eyes wet with a smile, and said, "I already trust you, more than I ever thought I could." Jamie squeezed my hand, his smile soft but fierce. "Then let's keep holding on. Together." We sat there for a long time, wrapped in the quiet warmth of a moment that felt like everything and nothing all at once. The city buzzed around us, but right then, it was just us. Two people who dared to fall, caught each other, and chose to stay. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned that perfect shade of dusk, I realized that trust isn't just about letting go. Sometimes it's about the courage to hold on, firm, steady, and unshakable. And with Jamie by my side, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be.